If you've ever invested in crypto before or even read the headlines in the news, investing in crypto is hard. 95% of people will fail. Most cryptos suck and will lose you your hard-earned money. And very few altcoins are worth ever investing into. But still, is it possible that you could take these 5 altcoins that I'm going to cover in this video and turn them into $1 million? Well, as the crypto market matures, we're seeing larger institutional players enter, and that's because all of the stars have aligned for crypto to explode, as the US is now a pro-crypto country. And we're talking ETFs, which have opened up the corridors for retirements and pensions to start picking up cryptos in a regulated manner. Many members of Congress are now working to pass crypto legislation and continue to introduce bills such as this stablecoin regulatory framework over and over and over again until they get the job done. Then in late April, the Fed has now opened the doors for banks to bank on crypto by withdrawing its guidance. In other words, banks will now offer crypto. And for the very first time, we now have a pro-crypto SEC chairman, which was recently confirmed, Paul Atkins at the helm. Now, it's important to note that these are highly sophisticated institutional players entering the space with loads of talent, data, and money. They will only invest in the very best of the best cryptos that are aiming to build the future with real business models or just have a potential for a lot of really strong growth. So which cryptos are those? Well, I had a few criteria when picking the cryptos in this video. First and foremost, the crypto cannot be in the top 10 cryptos by market cap because these are already very large, and because of that are far less likely to return you the types of gains that you're probably looking to get. In other words, we're looking for opportunities where you're still relatively early compared to everyone else to increase those returns. The second form of the criteria is the fact that the crypto has to be in the top of its class in a specific narrative. So it doesn't need to be a very small crypto. It can be very large as long as it's the best in that narrative and still below the top 10. It has to be in a trend that is here to stay. So for example, the top trends right now in narratives in crypto that have potential at changing the actual world are RWA or real world assets, AI cryptos, and even meme coins. Yes, meme coins. Social media will only grow, and as more new users and kids get to the stage or age where they want to download a DeFi wallet because these are internet native people. They've never lived without the internet. They will also enter the crypto market every single year and FOMO into only memes. They don't care about real world use cases. What they care about is buying into what everyone else is buying into on social media platforms. The third criteria was the fact that the crypto has to have real developments and a shot at a legitimate business model to produce real revenues, except for obviously the meme coins, which either way experience powerful rallies based on hype in bull markets and still produce great returns. And finally, the fourth criteria that I'm using is the longer term perspective and the price action. The token needs a bit of history and some decent tokenomics. Also, quick disclaimer, this video is for informational and educational purposes only. These are simply my opinions and should not be considered financial advice. Also, if you want a chance to win $100 of XRP that we give away every single week and announce the winner on Sunday, all you have to do is head on over to Bullrunners HQ on Twitter or X and follow the steps in the very first pinned post. Like the post, comment XRP, and sign up for a Blowfin account right here. Then each week we will announce the winner in our daily newsletter. And you can find that by clicking on the link down in the pinned post or comment below, as well as in the description. It will be the second link, bullrunners.com/altcoin secrets, to get our free ebook, which covers the 23 secrets to picking the very best explosive altcoins in the space before they actually pop off. Now, this actually covers the very criteria I use to pick cryptos in this video. So yes, I hide none of that information in this ebook, but either way, in order to know who the winner is, you just have to click this button, enter your email, and you're going to be signed up for that newsletter. Now, as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PauliDeFi. Now, I'm going to do these in random. I'm not going based on specifically market cap or which crypto is the best. I just think that these are probably some of the best picks in the specific narratives, and I will cover those narratives when I cover the crypto and why it's so valuable and what that future potential could look like. Now, obviously, I skipped over the top 10, not because they're not great investments into the future. Something like XRP is going to consistently win. Solana is going to consistently win. Bitcoin's obviously already winning at a $2 trillion market cap. It's just that these are already such large cryptos. Again, you're likely not going to see the same potential gains. So really what I'm focused on is best in their class cryptos, but still small enough that they could explode into the next year and arguably over the next few years. If you're looking for a longer term investment, that can make you a boatload of cash. And depending on how much you invest, obviously, right, you might not become a millionaire, but some of you might be able to if you actually have the capital and put in the work. But either way, I'm going to share the cryptos based on my opinion and work. And the first crypto I'm picking is none other than Chainlink. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to cover some of the fundamentals. In other words, some of the news and information surrounding each one of these. Obviously, I don't have the time in this video to cover all of it and why these cryptos are so great. This is stuff that you're going to have to do your own homework into if you really want to know. However, I'm going to cover the top 1 to 2 to 3 things depending on the crypto that make this fundamentally great. And then closer to the end of the video, I'll be covering the actual price action on each one of these cryptos and why I'm likely either entering now or going to enter soon. And either way, dollar cost average investing across the board over a sustained period of time. So without further ado, Chainlink is so amazing because although it's still at 12 in terms of market cap and arguably the largest of the entire pick list that I'm going to share, it's still only a $10 billion market cap. And I could easily see this at least 5 to 10xing over the course of the next year to at least 50, if not even $100 billion. And that is because it is by far the best oracle in the entire game. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what an oracle is, this is essentially what makes the internet work, that we get real and proper data. Who's to say that the time you see on your computer is the correct time? Well, an oracle is doing the hard work to verify that it is the correct time, or better yet, the price on a specific asset. What if you have one over here and one over here and neither are correct based on supply and demand? Oracles make sure that we're getting the proper data. In other words, this is a service or a mechanism that provides external data to a blockchain or smart contract. Since blockchains are isolated systems that cannot directly access real world data, this is why you'd probably need something like Chainlink, like the weather or stock prices or sports results. Oracles act as a bridge, fetching and verifying this data to ensure smart contracts can execute based on accurate and up-to-date information. So these are extremely important and arguably necessary across everything that we're going to do using blockchain in the future. Like, for example, banks, if they're going to do any real-world asset transactions or just use stablecoins, are going to need to have access to oracles and services like Chainlink in order to verify that the data they're getting is proper. Otherwise, they're doing bad business and all of their clients would leave them in a heartbeat. And so here's where it's really exciting. Again, I'm betting on the biggest gorilla, 500-pound gorilla in the room. Chainlink absolutely blows everyone else out of the water, owning about 47% of the DeFi market when it comes to oracles. As you can see, they have more protocols secured than even Pyth, which is the second largest, and their total value staked, again, excluding any centralized authorities or companies, this is just DeFi activity, is still sitting at $34.6 billion. In other words, there is more value staked using Chainlink than even the market cap of Chainlink, which speaks volumes to how much this token is actually undervalued. But here's where things get even more interesting. Swift is one of the largest global remittance and money transfer companies in the world, working with over 11,000 plus banks, and has aimed to use blockchain technology to modernize how they actually move money. They've been consistently testing pilots with blockchain experiments and technology. And here's what's crazy: working with more than a dozen major financial institutions and market infrastructures, and Chainlink, literally one of the only crypto companies that they are currently actually using. A leading Web3 services platform, Swift has successfully demonstrated that it can provide a single point of access to multiple networks. Now, here's what's really freaking cool. Not only does this make their business model more efficient, but they move quadrillions of dollars per year. And a lot of this underlying infrastructure in terms of their oracles will be provided by Chainlink. Again, extremely undervalued. Number 2 on this list, and again, they are in no particular order, is going to be a meme coin. Now, as you can see, the largest meme coin is Dogecoin. Then you have SHIB sitting at $8 billion. And then a market cap of $4.6 billion is none other than Pepe. But here's where things are interesting, even in terms of most visited meme coins right now. In other words, the most relevant. You can see that Pepe, being a very large market cap, far larger, has actually not only outpaced everything in terms of percentage gains this week, but is still consistently one of the most visited. So yes, the meme coin that I am sharing, and the only meme coin on this list, is Pepe. It is arguably one of the most recognized memes in the world from Matt Fury, and is still small enough to get you large gains, but recognized enough that many people will buy into it as the price action continues to improve. In terms of its actual holders, it has an insane amount of holders, and its circulating supply is that of its max supply. I believe a lot of the biggest holders are probably currently out, or at least have sold so much of their token that they're likely going to continue to hold for some major new all-time highs. Now, we're not going to look at the price action right now, although I have this chart up. What I'm actually focused on is right over here on the left-hand side. You can see that the top 10 holders of this token are currently at about 39% of the token. However, because there's such a large distribution of holders, and again, I'm assuming this is tracking only DeFi, not all the centralized exchanges like Binance or Coinbase, this is still really healthy for any meme coin, especially at the size it's at. What I'm focused on is over here on the small left-hand side. You can see that the largest holders by far are Binance, Robinhood, and I'm assuming other exchanges in the list that are actually not named or mentioned. In other words, if they're holding a lot of the supply, it's because they're actually offering it and earning fees and revenues on trade volume. Again, when I see the majority of the large holders are actually exchanges, this is very healthy for a larger meme coin. And so although it's hard to find any business in terms of a meme coin, it is nice to know that on the actual blockchain side, when it comes to its code, it has a pretty high score in terms of an audit from CertiK, which is a blockchain auditing company. As you can see, the code security ranks really high, the market ranks high, the governance ranks high, operational, and then community and fundamental is where it falls a little bit behind, but I don't know exactly where they're getting the fundamental at 52.99. You'd have to do more homework into that yourself. In general, the actual score is still an A at 86. Anything under 70 is probably not that great of a crypto. And so this is a pretty high score for any meme coin, especially when it has that much adoption and that many holders and arguably that much recognizability. Now, really quickly, before we dive into the next video, we have a link down in the description below, the very first link to sign up for Blowfin. If you do, you can get up to 10% cash back, which is unheard of, for up to $5,000 as a futures bonus. In other words, if you deposit $50,000 onto the exchange, they will give you a $5,000 futures bonus, and there are all sorts of other rewards and incentives to do some trade volume on this platform. You can also do things like copy trading from other traders that are absolutely elite and consistently in the money. So at the end of the day, if you wanted to be a little more hands off, you just take that portfolio, toss it behind that copy trader, and you can be more hands free. free. It will take the same trades that they take, which is a really cool option. So Blowfin is a great exchange, and you only get access to this 10% cash back bonus through our private link with Blowfin. You can find the link in the description below, and all you need to do is create an account with them and get started. Now let's dive back into the video. And for our third pick, we have a real world asset company called Ondo, currently sitting at a $3 billion market cap at just under $1 and well off those highs. So at a good time to accumulate and buy, especially as the crypto market starts to turn for the better. That said, Ondo is arguably one of the better players in the entire space when it comes to real world assets. And as you can see, if you come over to rwa.xyz, this chart shows you exactly how fast real world assets are growing. Since 2021, we were down really low to the tune of like $750 million. And this thing has just been on an absolute tear, especially in the private credit space and in the US Treasury space when it comes to real world assets being tokenized. In other words, asset tokenization is the future. And right now, Ondo is the second largest issuer in the space. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what real world assets are, basically you're taking and tokenizing real things or even contracts that other people buy, and then you tokenize it or put it on the blockchain, which is backed by a token that can be fractionalized. So it's easier, more affordable, more efficient. Transactions typically have quicker times to finality, and major players like the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, is major bullish, as well as the Robinhood CEO, Vlad Tenev, alongside stablecoins. As we get that regulation, many things will be asset, or better yet, tokenized, I should say, as assets in crypto. Right now, Ondo has a flagship offering of the US dollar and short-term US government bonds to the tune of $385 million and $268 million. And by the way, this space is going to grow to trillions of dollars. This is one of the only, I would argue, guaranteed plays in crypto. Not necessarily Ondo specifically, but the fact that asset tokenization is going to continue to grow, and some of the best players in asset tokenization will also grow alongside it. Now, when it comes to asset tokenization, this is directly from Ripple's website, which is the third largest crypto by market cap, excluding stablecoins like Tether. At the end of the day, you're going to see asset tokenization in investment grade bonds, in real estate, a $300 trillion market, collateral and liquidity management, trade finance and working capital, treasury and cash management, and a load of other things. And so not only will the space continue to grow, but you even have a company like Ondo partnering with the third largest crypto by market cap on the XRP ledger to bring all of these tokenized US treasuries and even BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager in the world, to their BIDL fund. So with these types of partnerships, there are endless streams of revenue that Ondo can create by offering real world assets to not only institutions, but also to retail investors like me and you. In other words, one of the best reasons that I believe Ondo is going to win, because it truly modernizes the technology that is currently moving assets worldwide. In other words, the current investing experience is broken. There are high fees, limited access, transfer frictions, platform fragmentation, and hidden risks to create barriers for both investors and companies that serve them. Ondo essentially fixes all of this. Asset tokenization fixes all of this. And so I believe something like Ondo, currently sitting at a $3 billion market cap, could easily 10, 20x. And if it dominates the space and actually outpaces the competitors, maybe even 50x in the future. And the fourth pick lands in the AI sector. And actually this will also be the fifth pick, as AI is not only here to stay, but is easily one of the best trends to invest into coming into the next decade. It's not going away, it's only going to grow, and blockchain will also need to modernize using AI. This is where artificial super intelligence comes in. This is a conglomerate of 3 different cryptos that did perform AI use cases and had a lot of utility in that space. They all combined to create this super company under the FET token, or Fetch AI. Right now, we're currently sitting at under $1. The market cap is only 1.86 billion, which is actually lower than the prior crypto we just covered. And also the circulating supply is very close to that of the total in max. So this is a really good sign that this thing has some room and legs to grow now. Now, for those of you guys who are wondering, the Artificial Superintelligence Alliance is a collective formed by Fetch AI. All of these cryptos were actually really well known in prior bull runs. However, they figured that, you know what, we're likely all going to struggle or compete against each other in this space. But in order to really dominate in the space, AI companies need to be massive and they need to have the best of the best talent and they need a lot of capital. So let's just all get together and create one company. We're talking Fetch AI, Singularity Net, and Ocean Protocol, all cryptos that I have invested into in the past. And now they have become one token under FET as the largest open sourced independent entity in AI research and development in all of crypto. And this might actually be true in the world because, again, you have fractionalized AI teams that are very large with companies like Grok or ChatGPT. But now we're talking on blockchain. And this company is led by some of the best engineers and pioneers in AI. Someone like Humayun Sheikh, a DeepMind alum, and also Ben Gortzel over at Singularity Net. They have partnerships with Telecom and Cisco to validate execution. And so although AI seems very simplistic when you and I are using it, it requires some of the smartest minds in the space. And they also need to create an ecosystem where developers can really have the right tools and training in order to build on their stack. So that said, they have modular infrastructure with scalable compute, data, and identity layers. They have agents for all sorts of frameworks. They have developer tooling like APIs, SDKs, and orchestration. And obviously they have tokenized incentives via their FET token, which again, with a team this stacked, I can't see any situation in which investors wouldn't want to invest in a crypto like FET, which I believe will eventually get rebranded into probably SAI or ASI or Artificial Superintelligence Alliance. And so in a major hype cycle where the entire world thinks AI is the only future we will ever know again, and as the valuations of major AI companies in the stock market continue to increase, we're talking Fetch or ASI has a measly market cap of $1.8 billion. So imagine this thing could easily 100x into the future to the tune of at least $200 billion, which is something that XRP has basically already done. And this has a very strong narrative, a strong team, as long as they execute in the right direction. Now let's move on to that final AI pick. And finally, the last crypto I'm going to be covering in this video is none other than BitTensor, sitting at about $420 for the meme. We are currently at a $3.7 billion market cap, and about 8.7 million tau have actually been mined of the max supply of 21 million tau. Very similar tokenomics to that of Bitcoin, and yes, they do need to be mined. In other words, BitTensor is often compared to Bitcoin by its proponents, largely due to their shared and fixed 21 million token supply. They also have a halving mechanism for this token and its permissionless ethos. However, unlike Bitcoin, which has already won in the game of adoption, and that just shows up in the market cap, much of this network's long-term strength depends on the fundamentals of its subnets. Again, this is an AI token with the ability to create AI applications by a bunch of devs, and those would be called subnets or dApps for decentralized applications. But what's interesting is that it does have a crazy amount of institutional support. Here we have a photo of Barry Silver, the guy behind DCG or Digital Currency Group, which is the parent to Grayscale among other crypto companies and services. And Grayscale for the longest time was the largest holder of Bitcoin aside from Satoshi Nakamoto, who nobody knows who that is. But now in terms of their actual trust or fund, they are still the third largest holder of Bitcoin in total, to the tune of 189,000 Bitcoin, right behind behind Fidelity. Now, Barry Silbert on X actually did share an article that he wrote on the evolution of digital ownership of assets to the decentralized ownership of intelligence and BitTensor as the World Wide Web of AI. In other words, he wants to create the next global scale internet in AI using blockchain and using BitTensor with the same tokenomics of Bitcoin. But the token has been performing pretty well, and we are going to be covering that here shortly. In general, I want to share this video of Barry Silbert himself talking about the token just this April of 2025.
It has the religious feeling of the early Bitcoin adopters, but in trying to solve, digital gold, decentralized money, eliminating government control over, your pocketbook, trying to instead help address major problems of the world through harnessing global intelligence.
And it feels that the future of the internet is intelligence at scale. And it feels that, one of the potential outcomes is this is not just about intelligence. It's just a decentralized internet's the wrong word, but
it's not even AI, honestly. I mean,
no, it's not.
This construct, and that's the thing, is these subnets are being launched right now. I mean, some of them are directly AI, it's inference or it's training or fine tuning, but these subnets, they're just a competition where there's essentially an incentive for people to compete. So anything that you want to try to get people to compete around, that's what the subnets are used for.
Yeah, exactly. And so we might think it's AI now, but we literally have no idea what this is going to be used for. It's for decentralized work teams to get incentivized for activity that they do on behalf of others.
Yes, and have the incentive to work together.
It's a coordination layer.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And so although Tau is currently the largest AI token in this space, actually surpassing Near, which changed their approach to the blockchain not too long ago, or even ICP, which is loaded with talent alongside Render, at the end of the day, it's still only 30 by market cap and sitting at only $3.7 billion. So this thing I could easily see 20 to 50xing over the course of the next year, 2 years, 3 years. Really depends. I'm not totally focused on time frames as much as I am on price targets and future potential. And so far, it seems BitTensor is winning and in the lead, but it's still such a small market cap. So now let's dive into the price action on each of these and some good ranges to accumulate into, or whether or not we should be accumulating right now. Now, again, disclaimer, just because I say something doesn't mean you have to do it. And at the end of the day, this is at your own risk. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart of Bitcoin really quickly. And as you can see, we've been on an absolute tear since the lows of 74,000 up to about $102,000 at the time of recording this video. And if it's up from there, this is going to leave a lot of room for growth for all of the rest of the market. In other words, if Bitcoin was dumping pretty hard, I probably wouldn't want to be over investing. I'd just be dollar cost averaging into these cryptos. However, sometimes you need to be a little bit more greedy in your dollar cost averaging if the market is really set to take off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a list of these altcoins and we're going to cover them one by one. We'll start with Chainlink. As you can see here, I have a downward trend line right here that I drew earlier for Chainlink. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but you do want to hit the majority of the points on the chart. You could argue it was right through here, and we ultimately came down and touched and retraced back into the trade, and are now breaking above that $15.40 resistance. So generally speaking, on a little bit of growth in terms of the volume and the fact that we're above that descending wedge or triangle, above the horizontal support and resistance, the EMAs have now flipped bullish from the 10 EMA crossing over the 20 EMA on a daily time frame, and the fact that we were well below average in terms of volume, and now we saw a really big spike in volume above average into a new uptrend for a series of higher highs and higher lows through the range from the lows of April 7th at $10. Things are looking really good for Chainlink, and I'm currently adding to my positions on this close and breakout. Now, looking at Pepe, arguably looking a little bit stronger, but what we had right here, you could argue, was a break above that horizontal. What used to be a support became a resistance, is now looking to be a potential support again. again. We might not even touch this range again. Now, I'm not going to state the amount of zeros we're at, but again, Pepe is looking really freaking strong. And it seems that we also had a double bottom right here on March 11th and again on April 8th. So with a breakout above, a new trend upwards, again, above both the 10 and 20 EMA, I would buy on any retraces down to the 922 range. And when you zoom out, this thing is still technically in a pretty strong uptrend. So this might have been the low before we get a new high. So Pepe can really explode into this range above the prior high up here. And let's just assume it gets to that prior high from today's prices, just using a percentage tool. At the end of the day, just getting back there would still be 154% gain. But because the trend is up and because this is a very strong meme, I could see it hitting even potentially 500%, which would only take you to that 0.0 whatever 59 range. Now looking at Ondo, if I come out to a weekly time frame, things are looking really good for Ondo as well. Consistently, we have been in an uptrend, right, with a series of higher highs and higher lows. Sometimes it helps to zoom out. So right here, we had our first major all-time high. We had our triple bottom lows right here. We had another high that came in higher than the prior high. And guess where these lows just came in? In other words, if we get a directional change in the trend with a series of higher highs and higher lows, we're likely going to go above that prior high at $2.14 for some major highs, especially with the narrative of asset tokenization. And the fact that this thing is at $1 leads me to believe that this thing is going to trend hard and make new highs. So now we'll zoom in and focus in on the price range just a bit. As you can see here, if I pull up the VRVP, it's going to show that we have quite a bit of volume traded right here at the 74-cent range down to the 70-cent range. And generally speaking, if we break above the dollar range, things are looking really good for Ondo because we have virtually no overhead resistance or volume up until about $2. So just the fact that we're above that 80 to 70 cent range is really healthy and good. And the fact that we put in a low right here at our prior support range. So this whole range from 70 down to 60 cents is huge. And so you can see that we have a series of what? Again, higher highs, higher lows. We need to get a break above present range of $1 in order for this thing to really fly at least to $1.36, but likely again for new all-time highs. And again, this is shorter term thinking. If you're looking at investing, these things could probably 10x, 20x into the future. And that's obviously not a guarantee. I'm not a fortune teller, but that's my personal opinion based on the fact that it's in a strong narrative, providing real value and utility, has strong teams. The tokenomics look pretty good on most of these. And generally speaking, it's going to service a bunch of real world assets. Again, this thing is looking a little bit weaker than the prior two cryptos that I just covered, but I would argue this thing has more upside potential than a Chainlink just because Chainlink moves a lot slower, whereas Pepe might explode really quickly and fast. However, long term, this would probably be a better investment if they're still around. So with something like this, I would accumulate with a little bit more caution because it has yet to break above that dollar range, and I would like to see it get above 105 to really confirm that this is now in a new uptrend. But if the whole market remains strong and Bitcoin continues to trend up, then this is still a pretty low risk trade. Now, coming into something like Fetch AI or Artificial Super Intelligence Alliance, this is actually looking pretty decent. I would still like to see the token break above that 80-cent range. We're currently trading above the 10 and 20 EMA, being supported by the 20 EMA on a daily time frame. If I pull those two things off the chart and we just focus on the chart solely, maybe zoom out to that weekly time frame, you can see that we honestly were in an intermediate term downtrend from the high back in March all the way at that high of $3 and basically 50 cents. Since that point in time, though, we bottomed at our prior all-time high, as you can see, at about 46 cents. So this range to me seems like a pretty strong support and resistance, right? It was a resistance here, it was a support here before new all-time highs, and became a support yet again. So because we're now trending upwards, I still would like to see a break above the 81-cent range to really confirm that this thing is done trending to the downside, and we're likely going to get some new all-time highs. Again, proceed with a little bit more caution on something like Fetch and Ondo because Link and Pepe seem to be in better ranges of accumulation and into new range highs. Still, these can outperform something like Chainlink just because they move far more quickly. Generally speaking here, long term, this thing is still in a massive uptrend. And if I were to take a trend line, again, this is a weekly time frame, ladies and gentlemen. gentlemen, from this range right here, you can see that even from the bottom back here, right, if we really line it up perfectly, we are consistently touching the bottom of this range going back to 2020. So this is a 5-year period where we just touched the bottom of the range yet again, and every single time we have, this thing has rallied for some new highs. The last time we broke out to some new highs from the lows, or even into a break above a resistance right here, you can see that we put in a 2,800% gain. Well, what if that's the case right here? Maybe we don't make a 2,800% gain, but we make a 1,000% gain for an $8.80 token. Again, this is all completely theoretical. I could use a bunch of different things like a fib scale, but at the end of the day, we're not going to do that in this video. I'm just showing you that from a technical perspective, and from the fact that this is one of the best AI tokens in the space in a really strong narrative, it's likely going to do extremely well, especially because of the fact that it's under $2 billion in terms of its market cap. I think something like this can fly. Now, finally, we are going to look at Tau. And as you can see, Tau is a really interesting one because we not only did put in a double top with expansion in volume from a weekly time frame where we saw consistent resistance at the $725 range, right? Then we saw volume really decline into the lows right here. We also saw a really strong support right here. Let me go ahead and put a line there, and arguably even just a range up to like 229 or $100.92, where we not only bounced really hard and saw another V-shaped recovery, but we're trending really strong to the upside. So for whatever reason, even with really weak volume into these ranges, this thing is putting in new higher highs and higher lows. And as you can see on the prior charts we were looking at, most of them were right below their range resistances right here, where I said I'd like a breakout, whereas Tau is really leading the market in a breakout and consistently breaking out and trading very similarly to Bitcoin. And I would argue that's probably due to the fact that they have a lot of institutional support. Yes, a lot of tokens are sitting in team wallets, but it has a lot of good tokenomics as well as that of Bitcoin. So with all of that said, I could see this thing easily pumping up to that $700 range. And if it did, typically with a range this long going all the way back to 2024 on the daily time frame, you could see that it's likely going to put in 100% of that move in terms of $525. So if I take it to the top of this range and put it for $525, I think it would easily hit that about $1,200 to $1,300 range on a breakout. Now, at that point in time, because the tokenomics are so similar to Bitcoin and because it's breaking out in a bull market, this thing could easily 5 to 10x, and then into the longer term future do far greater than that. Now, that's it for the video, folks. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and also check out Altcoin Pro University. You can find the link in the description below for bullrunners.com, which should take you directly to this page. We offer a ton of tools, training, and resources, and I know I flew through the technical analysis. So if that's something you actually want to learn live with me and take an actual essentials course, then we offer that directly over here at Altcoin Pro University. It's your one-stop shop for education, tools, resources, trainings. We have a bunch of experts and DeFi researchers that are constantly sharing all sorts of value in terms of yield that can actually earn you your money back. And we virtually guarantee that. In other words, if in 14 days you can't get access to a simple yield pool or a protocol to earn your $97 per month back, then ask for a refund within 14 days. But realistically, I'm pretty confident you can do that in one of our DeFi yield quick wins. And then everything else is a free ride where you can hop on these live calls with me and ask me all sorts of questions. And I teach you step by step how to think and how to approach a technical analysis chart so you can be educated about when you make your own decisions and look at the chart versus relying on other people or a YouTube channel. So again, if any or all of that sounds interesting to you, head on over to bullrunners.com. I look forward to seeing you on the other side, my friend. Thanks so much for watching the video. Until next time, goodbye.